You're listening to the BCIT Podcast Network. And now, back to your regularly scheduled programming.
You are listening to the Bandwagoners, news and notes from around the NHL.
You got the Bandwagoners. My name is Andy Cole. I'm with my good buddy, partner in crime, Justin Boniface, all the way up in Mackenzie, British Columbia. How you doing, my friend?
Very well, thank you. Not too much hockey to talk about, so we got a short show probably for you today, but nonetheless, a few news and some more time to maybe analyze what's happening in the NHL for those reasons. So
yeah, we say that a lot, and we've said that a lot over the last couple of years, and yet we still seem to always prolong these shows somehow. We get into some sort of verbal disagreement or something like that. So we say this now, but there's a few things we should discuss. Yeah, Justin's right. I mean, you're very correct. We didn't even have a show last week. There really just wasn't a lot going on in the NHL. Obviously, some teams moving up and down in the standings, but nothing really crazy to talk about. However, today was a bombshell of a day for Canadians, the hockey market in Canada specifically. Rogers Sportsnet signed a deal with the NHL today. Get this. 12-year deal for exclusive rights to NHL hockey in Canada, broadcast rights, a $5.2 billion deal. Over 12 years. So that means no more TSN broadcasts. CBC hockey is pretty much no more. It's only going to be on Saturdays now. They're not going to be doing any other hockey stuff throughout the week. Anything related to the NHL for the next 12 years is going to be exclusively on Rogers channels.
there's a couple exceptions. They're saying CBC might still get the playoffs and the Stanley Cup just because of their brand recognition. And the question is, will NHL want Sportsnet or City TV to be carrying the Stanley Cup finals? So obviously CBC does have that going for them, as they have a little bit of experience in that category. But even the careers of Ron MacLean and Don Cherry are up in the air right now. There's no telling how much Rogers wants to fund, and it's looking like they won't even get dibs on first games.
This is a massive deal, man. Like,
the first schedule out that went out to City TV employees already said that their Saturday night Toronto games, like Toronto, Pittsburgh, Toronto, Montreal, those are on City TV. They're not on CBC, so Hockey Night in Canada, even though airing games Saturday night will probably be along the Ottawa, Florida game type scenario.
And it's important to note, Hockey Night in Canada on CBC, which has been a staple in Canada for, well, forever, really.
Like 1952, they're at 61 years, I think, now.
Unbelievable.
I mean, Canada.
Yeah, it's absolutely unbelievable. And now they're pretty much reduced to just Saturday nights. And it's important to note, they're only contractually set to do that for the next 4 years. So 4 years from now, if Rogers and the NHL was to decide, Hockey Night in Canada, we don't really need it anymore, we could take the reins from them, as it were, you might see Hockey Night in Canada disappear altogether, which would just be almost unfathomable. I mean, it's just such a staple, as we said. I mean, I grew up like you, I'm sure, and like most hockey fans in Canada, we all grew up watching Hockey Night in Canada, and it may be no more, which would be very sad. It would be a sad day in Canada. It's also important to note that even now, Hockey Night in Canada is not what it is now is not what it will be, because Rogers holds all creative rights to Hockey Night in Canada, so they have the final editorial decision. So it's expected there will be a lot of shakeups within CBC, within the ranks of CBC. There will be lots of things going on. Obviously, people being moved around, people being let go. As you said, Don Cherry, Ron MacLean, they're all up in the air right now. Like, where are they going to go? Are they going to stay there? A lot of CBC personalities that we all know and love, guys like Elliot Friedman. It'll be really interesting to see what happens with them. But I think one thing sort of forgotten in all this is the incredible work that TSN has done with hockey over the last few years. They have been incredible. Like, they have turned themselves into the go-to hockey station, and now they're no longer going to be able to broadcast the games. They've completely lost all power to do that. So I find that to be very sad as well, because I for one, really enjoy TSN and the work that they do.
I agree with you. TSN is an incredible sports broadcaster. They have taken a lot of notes from ESPN as far as professionalism is concerned, and taken that to a Canadian audience. They've done such a good job with the NHL, and the thing that hurts the most for me is their color man, their game callers, game announcers, everybody who works within the NHL and TSN organization is awesome. Their knowledge is great, which is key. You don't find that a lot. I mean, the only reason I like Don Cherry at all is entertainment value. I mean, his opinions are mostly off the chart. You're lucky if you're going to even get one of his or two of his thoughts out in the segment that they give him, because he goes off the rails so crazy like you and I do. So really, I mean, there's no... That's the only guy on CBC I even care about to begin with.
I really like Elliot Friedman. I really like Elliot
Houston.
Friedman.
Is that what you're going to say?
Well, Jim Houston's my all-time favorite broadcaster, and I'm a bit of a bias.
He's the only guy I think is any good.
He's a little biased because he was a Canucks guy. I really like Elliot Friedman a lot, too, though. I think he's very insightful.
I think he's insightful. I don't really like his TV presence, but, I mean, that's picking hairs at this point. The bottom line is we're losing 15 guys on TSN that I love, and I got nobody at SportsCenter I like. I've named one game announcer on CBC I like. So my issue now is, okay, like, I've hated Sportsnet, like, ever since hockey existed. They're just bad. Like, they're just a bad network. I worked for Rogers, and I still considered them awful. There's no way I would ever side with Sportsnet in the who's the greater sports debate. I mean, even The Score is also owned by Rogers, but a little more independent. I would still watch them over Sportsnet.
Sportsnet really has to step up their game now that they're going to become a national network, and they really, like, TSN's really set the bar. Like, TSN has set the standard of what great hockey sportscasting is, and Rogers has a lot to live up to because TSN has an incredible reputation around the world, and as you've said, Sportsnet does not as much. I mean, they get a lot of viewers and a lot of listeners and a lot of followers, but they have not put out the same level of quality over the years that TSN has. So now that they're in the national spotlight, they really have to step up their game, and it'll be very, very interesting to see how they do that in the coming year.
And then it also says a lot about, like, what. Well, I mean, there's a couple things up for grabs. What I was going to say is, like, we never get to hear Hockey Night in Canada again. So first, like, I was a fan of it moving because I honestly watched hockey more through the week than obviously Saturday's only one day a week. And, then I got to hear Hockey Night in Canada, like, every night, Wednesday night TSN games, Tuesday TSN games. So I was liking it for a while there. But now... you're only going to hear it if you are a Montreal Canadiens fan and you watch RDS, because RDS does get to retain the next 3 or 4 years rights to Montreal games.
You're talking about the theme song, right?
Yeah, the theme song, Hockey Night Canada theme song. Sorry, yeah, that's right. Hockey Night Canada is the program. I keep forgetting that. So the theme song, we got to hear on TSN. We probably won't get to hear that ever again anymore because CBC doesn't own it and TSN's not doing hockey, and they're probably not going to do it before a highlight show.
Yeah,
so,
well, I mean,
right?
it is important to note that TSN's broadcast schedule, other than obviously the games, which they will not be broadcasting anymore, I think their schedule, from what I understand, is going to be largely unchanged. Like their all of their hockey related shows, their highlight packages, pretty much their daily broadcast schedule is going to be what it was before. You're just not going to have games. So I mean, there's still going to be lots of hockey coverage, which is good because guys like Bob McKenzie, Darren Dreger, James Duthie, guys that are well respected in the industry and incredibly knowledgeable about the game, guys that we both love, they're still going to have a home. So, I mean, they're still going to be active and busy. It's not like they're just going to all be out of work all of a sudden. There is speculation that some of the guys might jump back to Rogers. Drager was a Rogers guy for a while. That's where he cut his teeth and started his career. So he might jump back. But I think that a lot of the TSN's personalities that we really enjoy listening to and watching, like Chris Cuthbert, for example, who is, for my money, one of the best commentators in the business. Like, he's just terrific. Those kinds of guys will still have work. You just unfortunately won't see them during the games. They're going to have to do their stuff, during the highlights, like the Sports Center shows, That's Hockey Tonight, stuff like that. So, I mean, TSN, I'm sure, will do everything in its power to maintain the image of the number one hockey network. But now that they no longer have access to broadcasting the games, for 12 years no less, Rogers has a serious advantage here, and they could take this thing by the balls, no other way to say it, and really become what TSN was. I mean, if they really want to, they could become the premier sports network because now the ball's in their court. And it'll be really interesting to see how they live up to the challenges of doing that, because I don't hate SportsCenter. I mean, I watch them for all the Canucks games. I like them. I like SportsCenter. I don't have any issues with them. I probably like them more than you do. But I definitely don't like them as much as TSN. TSN is just, in my eyes, the go-to hockey station. So
they're in a different league. That's the bottom line.
A completely different
TSN
league.
is just better. You just watch, and it's just more professional. They have more knowledge. They're less biased. They took the national brand and they made it happen. So
Yeah.
Rogers has to do it. That's just, there's no question about it. The crazy thing is it's a 12-year deal. That is so long that
Yeah.
Rogers could just biff this and we could have crappy hockey in Canada for the next 12 years. What I was trying to say earlier was TSN does still maintain broadcasting rights, not only to RDS Montreal Canadiens games, which I did get to mention, but they do have a year with the Winnipeg Jets for more than 60 games through to 2021. So for the next 8 years, the Winnipeg Jets will still be a TSN because that deal was brokered with the MTS Sporting Arena when the Jets came back to Winnipeg.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, they have a partnership with the Senators. I don't know what the details are to the Senators' extent. I don't know what they will get. And then the last one is the World Juniors. Thank God.
Yeah.
Oh, man. We still get to watch on Boxing Day the World Juniors on TSN. So we'll still get to watch all of – and that's really important to me because, like I said, when you have guys who are analysts and they really do their homework and they really know their stuff, you get to – the World Juniors are a treat because you get to see who's been drafted by who's going to be drafted first overall. You get to see their talent out on the ice. TSN really represents the young players well. And not saying that Rogers can't, but it's more delicate, I think, than the NHL because you don't want to lose that fan base.
Mm-hmm.
NHL, you're not going to lose the fan base. We're all Canadians. We all, but the World Juniors really have grown in the last 5 to 10 years, and that is solely to do with TSN. So it's good that we get to see them continue to grow on that network.
Well, let's not forget TSN also has the rights to this little thing called the Olympics. So they have the Olympics as well, which is huge. You'll get to see some great hockey with the Olympics on TSN. But I would like the optimist in me, because now that Sportsnet is going to be turning into a national network, you see the bias because you have the Sportsnet Pacific, Sportsnet West, and you'll still have those stations, but it's going to be branded as a national network now, just like TSN. So hopefully by branding it in that way, some of the bias that you see on Rogers Sportsnet might disappear a little bit, just because they will recognize their audience is now going to get a lot bigger, especially during game time and on Saturdays no less. So
there's a quote here as well from a telecom analyst just on the CBC website. While this looks like a big loss for Bell Media, it never had these national broadcasts, which were historically owned by the CBC. We would expect Rogers to sell some of these games to Bell to help monetize the fees paid to the NHL. So you might see TSN kind of like contracting the odd game out, saying, oh, we can take this one off your hands here and there. So that might be a nice treat as well. But it's just like Rogers has to hit the ground running next season and make sure that they do a good job. That's all I ask. And it might even be cheaper for me because now it looks like Rogers is going to also retain the I don't know what you would say, the release rights, I guess, to the digital broadcast of the NHL Game Center and Center Ice programs. So they'll have exclusive rights to tablet viewing, phone viewing, any mobile broadcast.
Which is huge.
Well.
I mean,
exactly.
that's becoming a major market.
Yeah, I may not have to pay for NHL Center Ice next year if CBC or Rogers chooses to actually broadcast locally or Montreal Canadiens games in the West. That's the only reason I buy Center Ice, is because if I want to watch it out here, it's all French. I have to subscribe to RDS because it's all blacked out or whatever. So ideally, I'll just be able to watch Montreal games on TV. So that would ultimately be the game changer, because who cares if I'm watching Columbus and Nashville on TSN with the best analysis and I have to listen to Montreal and French radio. Now, if I can watch all the games, I don't really care who's broadcasting them as long as I see my boys play.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a good point. I mean, ultimately, this is a massive thing for Canadians, Canadian hockey fans. I mean, this is the biggest media deal in Canadian history. This is the biggest sports deal ever. It's a massive amount of money. Apparently, TSN had something like $4 billion on the table, and Rogers just was able to beat them out. And at the end of the day, to Bettman, I mean, money talks, right? That's what ultimately it comes down to, is money.
I find it crazy that Bell wouldn't counteroffer. I feel like there's something missing from that. I don't know that, like, how does I mean, I don't obviously know the books of these companies, but Bell is a way bigger multimedia network than Rogers, as far as things that they own, and the networks that they own are bigger than the networks Rogers
Maybe
owns.
Bell was just not willing to put the money out. Maybe they were just like, too rich for our blood.
Which is crazy. That I think is crazy. So we might even get some more information that comes out of the works before the next season starts.
Oh, I'm sure stuff will get leaked.
Read into that. I'd like to read into that a little more as it goes.